Hello, afternoon. How you doing? Welcome to another Nimrin Live. Happy New Year. It's probably the last day that we can say Happy New Year, isn't it? But nonetheless, Happy New Year. I hope you had a great festive season and that you're keeping well and safe. Hopefully we're out of the woods, people being jabbed left, right and centre. So fingers crossed for a good 2021. And right, well, today we're going to be talking about property video of all things. We're actually in the middle of a shoot relating to a amazing development in central London. So that gave us the great idea of talking about property videos and how video content can add a lot of value to audiences. And why you should be doing them and why. I think we just heard from Tom coughing in the background. So this is probably a good time for Tom to join the stream. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How do you? I just realised it's a blue shirt club today.
It certainly is. Yeah, definitely. All the best people are wearing blue shirts today. Tom, did you? It's so funny because I'm acting like I didn't speak to you 30 seconds ago, but we'll just go with did you have a good Christmas?
I did, thank you. Yeah, it was very restful. Yeah, I mean, it was quiet, I guess, the same as everyone else's, which is just how it should be in these times. So, how was yours?
Not too bad, thanks. Yeah, my daughter, I've got a 3-year-old, so the flat's full of random things like this kicking around. But yeah, it was really good actually. It was nice to take a break. But yeah, so obviously today we're going to be talking about luxury property videos, aren't we, Tom?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're not necessarily talking about the videos that you may see on Rightmove, for example. You know, if you're selling a flat somewhere or like a semi-detached, you know, you do get videos that are included on places like Rightmove. This is very much about big kind of property developments and luxury developments. Yeah, we've got plenty of examples that we'll be showing you as well. Video is obviously a great way for sellers to showcase new property and give people a kind of taste of what it's like to live there or invest in these developments. They support photography. You wouldn't necessarily have video replacing photography. They both have their strengths and weaknesses, I think it's fair to say. But Tom, let's have a quick look just while we're chatting at a project you worked on a couple of years ago for an amazing development in central London in Mayfair called the W1. Do you want to give us some background on this project?
Yeah, so this was a series of videos which we made shot them over a couple of days. So this was quite a large property in West London, obviously in W1, and the client was very keen on showcasing the lifestyle of the local area and talking about kind of not just the property itself, but what it would be like to actually live there. Which is definitely a common thread that we have through all of our property projects. It's not just about the space; it's about selling the dream, I suppose. So this was a whole series of apartments and buildings, townhouses, and things like that. And the client was very keen on just us sort of taking the potential viewer, the potential buyer, I suppose, on a journey throughout these properties and just giving a really good sense of space. So obviously it wasn't a replacement for photos. It was in addition to all of the usual collateral that marketers use, but this was something that went out on Instagram, and it was a really great thing for people to it was sort of targeting those people that are browsing, scrolling on Instagram, and it was a real kind of showstopper video to stop them in their tracks, basically.
So it helps to reach a wider audience. But you know, if you're a client and you had an amazing development that you're trying to sell, how does it compare to just using amazing photography?
Well, I think amazing photography is obviously fantastic, and it has its place, and it has been doing a wonderful job of selling property for years and years and years. I think a video is sort of adding a little bit more color to the space, because with video you get a lot more dynamism, you got more movement. So it's an opportunity to explore the space a bit more than just a static photo. It lets you look around corners, it lets you get a sense of context, how the space relates to furniture, how the space relates to other spaces around it. So in this particular shoot, we had some nice gimbal moves to kind of take the viewer seamlessly through the property, which is just that nice sort of bit of movement, a bit of depth that you don't get with just photos. By making a video and adding music and showcasing the wide area as well, you also get that emotional impact, which you don't necessarily get with photos. You can be a lot more manipulative of people's emotions and mood and tone and all that kind of stuff. But overall, it's safe as well. You know, particularly in a climate like this, if you can't get out safely to meet other people or go traveling, if there's travel restrictions, if you're an international buyer, maybe you're buying a property abroad, it's just a brilliant way to get familiar with a place without actually having to be there in person.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that video is great for is telling a wider lifestyle story. So yes, you can, as you can see from the examples here, make a complex or a development or a property look amazing internally and externally, but you can also tell a lifestyle story. You can help sell the dream of an area.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and that's the reason why people buy property in the first place. That's the reason why people want to live in certain areas. It's not just because of falls on a door. It's because of this is the kind of thing that you get to at the weekend. This is how you feel when you live there. This is what it's like to be part of the community. So that kind of selling the lifestyle, selling the dream is a really huge part of what goes into making these videos. It's a huge part of what goes into the initial thought process. It's quite difficult to tell a story about just an inanimate object, so it's a case of finding that emotional journey and that hook that's going to really kind of attract people more than just images.
Yeah, and I suppose you have different audiences. You may have an investor who's literally just looking at whereabouts is it, how long does it take to get into central London, for example. But on the other hand, you have people who are looking to buy homes. They just want to know what's the area like, is it safe, where are the nearest schools, restaurants, cafes, and that sort of thing. And we worked on a project not so long ago for Berkeley Homes in just north of central London, and it's probably worth talking about that, Tom, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. So that was one. So talking about, I suppose, how to inject a story into a property video. The initial idea was because this property is based around a wetlands, a wildlife park, a nature reserve. We came up with the idea of this flight of the dragonfly, where we would sort of start the camera low in the reeds, in the bushes, by the water, and then we would gradually move up throughout the video until we're sort of in the air, overlooking the whole thing. And it was this combination of property, lifestyle, and nature, which the client was really keen to get across. That was a huge selling point of the property. So that was just a really interesting way to inject create a journey for the audience and actually tell a story that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then on top of that is when you can, if you want, you can overlay graphics explaining, 10 minutes to central London or whatever USPs you want. But it's that sort of narrative structure is what we were trying to achieve with the flight of the dragonfly.
Yeah, because you have different elements, obviously, within the marketing tools that these developers and property builders have: brochures, photographs, video, and so on. And they all have their kind of strengths and weaknesses, I think. So, yes, you can have supporting information in the video, like 2 minutes from the tube station and lots of restaurants nearby and so on. But a brochure will do that, or a website, of course, will do that really well. So video really does have its strengths, in all sorts of places, particularly selling the dream and the lifestyle of the area. And in this particular example that we're going to have a look at in a second for Woodbury Down, it's very much nature, places where you can go running, exercise, fresh air, all that sort of stuff. And video does that really, really well, I think, if you're looking to choose a new home. So Tom, should we have a quick look at the video?
Let's check it out.
Let's have a look. Good stuff. That was a great project. Tom said, as you can see, it's very much about selling the dream, selling the lifestyle of the area. And there were two interesting elements, I think, to that video that we can have a quick chat about. One is hyperlapse. In the kind of about 2/3 of the way in, there was almost looks like a time lapse, but it's called a hyperlapse. We could have a quick chat about that in terms of how we did it, but also the drone footage is just incredible. And again, something that you can do with fills, but with stills, but once it's moving, it just adds so much more, I think. So yeah, Tom, it'd be great to hear about the drone side of things.
Sure. So I mean, like you said, the drone side of things just adds an entirely new angle to everything. It's camera perspectives with camera lenses that you can't get from the ground. You can't get that by just walking around a property with a gimbal or handheld or with a tripod or something. It's taking to the skies to give a whole new sense of space that even if you're walking around on the ground, you just wouldn't be able to get. So I think something that's really key with these things is context, and it's establishing a property within a location. And with drone footage, you can do that really well, more so than with maps or something like that, which are kind of a little bit static and a little bit two-dimensional. It gives you a new sense of movement and dynamism. And just establishing something in the wider context of the surrounding area. So there's some shots where you can see the skyline of central London. You can also see how the buildings relate to each other. You can see how the buildings relate to the wetlands, which is nearby. And we also had good opportunity to take some aerial shots of yoga lessons and things like that. People that were sort of mooching about and living their lives, which is exactly the kind of thing that we wanted to showcase and sell to the audience, and sort of so that they could imagine themselves in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have some internal shots, obviously, that you can see within the video where you can see the property, and the property looks really nice. But really, I think you just can't beat amazing photography for the interiors, at least, and exteriors to an extent as well. But just having those drone shots and tracking over the water and showing the height and the scale of the buildings and so on is amazing. Quick reminder, by the way, if you do have any questions for Tom or myself, feel free to use the chat box on whichever platform you are using at the moment. Got to say hi to Dylan. Dylan is one of the best photographers I've ever worked with. He's incredible. So it's great to see you, Dylan. Hopefully we get to work with you sooner or later. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let us know. Should we just quickly touch on hyperlapse as well, which is a fun thing that we had in the video as well?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I knew you were going to pick that up, actually. I forgot to mention that earlier. But that's really cool that we utilized in this, which I'd like to do more of, actually. I think it's got a good home in certain places. But hyperlapse, like you said, Pete, is a bit like a time lapse. But whereas traditionally time lapses tend to be locked off cameras, which showcase a single frame and how that changes over time. So that's when you get all sort of people moving around, or stars going across the sky, or waves moving quickly, or whatever it is that you're photographing. A hyperlapse, the camera is actually moving with it. So the mechanics of that is that you take a photo and you move a little bit further, and you take another photo, you move a little bit further, and you take another photo. The actual process is very what's the word? I suppose time consuming. It's not laborious. I mean, there's definitely some people that specialize it and would enjoy spending all night moving inch by inch. We've got some great camera operators that enjoy doing that. But it's a little bit like stop motion in that sense. And then that way you get the camera actually traveling forwards down a street or through a building, and then you get the sense of everything rushing past. So in that video that we just saw, there was a hyperlapse where we go sort of down the street and then into Manor House, I think, tube station, and then up the other side to Bank, and then you see all of these kind of central London landmarks. That's just a really cool, nifty technique that you wouldn't get if you were just taking the camera in real time down a train and then down a stairs and then up the other side. This is something that gives a sense of everything rushing around, and it's quite an exciting technique. So I spent about a day just doing that hyperlapse, but I think it adds a huge amount to the project, and it's a really great way of taking us from one place to the other, and it's a real great way to keep audiences engaged and excited about the project.
Yeah, and of course, what we're doing really in a very short space of time, without having to be explicit with voiceover or text, for example, is saying, one, there's a tube station nearby, and two, it's really easy to get to Bank. And that's just in a 5-second sequence that looks kind of fun and different and so on. So, Tom, at the beginning of the stream, we were talking about the fact that you're actually in the middle of doing a shoot at the moment. It'd be interesting to hear about the kind of COVID side of things and the restrictions, and if there's, what the impact is in terms of logistics, and whether there's any kind of knock-on effect to the final deliverables.
Sure, that's a good question. It's something that everyone's going to be asking. The short answer is that there is little to no impact. There are some really good advantages of property shoots, although they can obviously change depending on the scope. So just thinking back to a few of these other projects, they've all been done with very, very small crews. The Woodbury one for Berkeley Homes, that was maybe a crew of 3 or 4. The W1, which we saw earlier in the stream, that was a crew of 3 people, producer, DP, and an assistant. When you're filming property, the advantage is that the property is not going to move anywhere. So you have time to spend on getting those perfect shots, and obviously you have sort of weather and light and things like that to consider. But it's very doable for 1 or 2 people to spend a decent amount of time getting really, really good footage. So you don't have to be in a mad rush to get good results, and that means that you can have small crews, which means it's easy for people to social distance. It's easy to keep them safe. So for this shoot that we're working on at the moment, again, very small crew. There'll be 3, maybe 4 people max, and it's a large property, so there'll be plenty of distance between us. We'll all be wearing masks. We can have the windows open, so there's a good flow of fresh air, ventilation, and that's kind of it, really. I mean, the kit will all be wiped down and sanitized beforehand. The client may turn up to have a little look at the beginning of the project, the end of the project. They're welcome to stay throughout the shoot as well. But generally, because everything has been storyboarded and designed at the beginning of the project, there won't be any surprises on the actual shoot.
Yeah, cool. And I think we're nearly done for our live stream, but I was just going to talk about how versatile the footage is. So earlier we were talking about different types of audiences. So investors, for example, versus people who are just looking to buy a family home. From the same content, you can re-edit the content for different audiences with different calls to actions and so on. But I assume, you could also use the footage for the backgrounds of websites, for events and so on, right? Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. You could take, particularly if you're thinking about drone footage as well, and you think about the nature of the way that the camera does these lovely sort of slow pushes in and things like that. There we go. I mean, you can imagine that just sitting on the background of your website with the text and logo after it. So a single shoot for a single video is a pretty incredible investment when you're working with footage like this, because this footage is just completely reusable through other projects. You could repurpose it into square, vertical Instagram videos, Facebook videos. You could run them as YouTube pre-rolls, as well as having your main video sitting on your website or LinkedIn or property portfolio page or wherever it is you might be having it. But that footage can just be used for pretty much anything you like. And particularly contextual footage like this and drone footage is really evergreen, so you can keep reusing it in future projects, particularly if you want to get a sense of space. If you're a property client that's working in that area a lot, and you get a few establishing shots of London, then they're not going to date really. It's going to take a good few years before you decide that you might want to reshoot them. So when you're commissioning a property video like that, you're not just getting the one video, you're basically getting a full suite of marketing material that you can just keep using.
Exactly. So great return on investment. And by the way, top tip for you, if you're ever near the Tower Bridge and Tower of London, at the bottom of that building, there's an amazing restaurant / cafe that has these kind of big bubbles that you can sit in. So once cafes and restaurants and so on open, if you're looking for a really good place to go and get a coffee, that's a top tip for you right there. And well, great, Tom, it was fantastic speaking to you as ever. And of course, if you are in the property sector, if you have property clients and so on, you can absolutely shoot at the moment, and video is so versatile, you can get an amazing return on investment. So yeah, we would love to chat if we're not already working with you. But I think that's about it for today. Thanks again to Tom. Thank you to Ian, who's pressing the buttons behind the scenes. And that's it for today. We'll leave you with our show reel.
Nemarin Film and Video,
the world's branded video agency.
2020 Showreel.
I always wanted to be a storyteller.
I knew I wanted to do something more creative.
Something really magical.
Everything is about the rhythm.
Ow! Sheer publicity.
Okay, so the faces thing?
Yes.
There is no comparison to beauty. And you will never get bored of it.
Nemarin.